we're moving on to the next story here because this actually takes us into the 2024 election and the issue with Joe Biden's electability. Because the thing is this, there is now an anti-Biden coalition that has been started by Muslim Americans in Michigan. Now, we've said this before on this show that Biden needs to win Michigan in order to win, right? So Michigan has the largest Arab population in the United States, and they are not happy with the way that Joe Biden has responded to this conflict abroad. And they are making their voices heard. So I want to start with this first clip here from Meet the Press.
Adam Abusala worked on President Biden's 2020 campaign in battleground Michigan.
Yeah, I was working on Arab American engagement, getting people out to vote for Biden.
So committed that his Palestinian American parents put Biden 2020 on his birthday cake that year. But today, as President Biden shows unwavering support for Israel in the wake of Hamas's terror attack, Abusala says he's devastated.
Right now, I have family in Palestine who's afraid for their lives. And Biden is doing nothing to stop it. I'm hurt for the betrayal that we feel from Biden, but I also feel like a little bit of guilt for what I've done.
Amid a humanitarian crisis and with the civilian death toll in Gaza rising, Muslim and Arab American community leaders warned the president's re-election support in Michigan could be in jeopardy.
They said that we had to save America from Donald Trump, and now we feel that we have to save Palestine from Joe Biden.
Say it again. I'm sorry. We're going to hear that one again, guys. This may be a t-shirt slogan.
Re-election support in Michigan could be in jeopardy.
They said that we had to save America from Donald Trump, and now we feel that we have to save Palestine from Joe Biden.
Now we have to save Palestine from Joe Biden. This is wild, right? Again, all the more reason more people may show up to vote, independent or third party.
More than 300,000 Americans from the Middle East call Michigan home, a state President Biden flipped in 2020 after Donald Trump won in 2016 by just 11,000 votes. And although not all Arab Americans are Muslim, an exit poll from the Council on American Islamic Relations showed nearly 70% of American Muslims backed Biden.
We're predicting this could be another 2016.
Nata Al-Houthi runs the Michigan chapter of a nonprofit that studies and works to increase the political engagement of American Muslims called Engage.
145,000 Michigan Muslims went out to vote in 2020. Biden needs the Muslim vote in order to win. And right now, it doesn't look good.
The White House in Biden's campaign says they are aware of the concerns and are working to address them.
We mourn every innocent life lost. We can't ignore the humanity of innocent Palestinians who only want to live in peace and have an opportunity.
But the publisher of the Arab American News, who last year vocally backed Democrats in the midterms, is calling for his community to withdraw its support. Did you vote for Biden in 2020?
Yes.
Would you support his re-election?
No, I have.
Okay, so here's something I want to point out, ladies and gentlemen. These are people that did support Joe Biden in 2020. These are not people that did not support him. These were his supporters. So this is another example of Joe Biden supporters leaving him in droves. You cannot continue to pander to people in this country and expect that they will continue to come out and support you. People have had enough.
I've already made the decision, and we are not going to endorse him in the paper. It's not only disregard to our lives, our livelihood. It's more than disrespecting me, disregarding my life. And while we see, the kids, our kids and our families are being torn apart overseas, we are being threatened here.
In Michigan's majority Arab American city, the Dearborn Democratic Club president says he's concerned these feelings will threaten the party's full control over state government, but insists the sentiment can still shift.
We still have time. The president still have time to turn things around and make good progress toward the two-state solutions, stopping the war.
But as the war expands, nothing is guaranteed. Do you plan to vote for President Biden?
I'm a Democrat, and I support the democratic values, and I will always vote Democrats.
And that includes President Biden?
We will have to wait and see. But that's what I'm voting. I'm voting Democrat.
We need African Americans to do this too, to have this same type of push and say, no vote without any type of concessions, right? I mean, I'm not going to vote for Democrat or Republican anyway, but people need to understand that it's now gotten to the point where even Muslim leaders in swing states are calling out President Biden again. We're going to the swing states. So this is very crucial. Again, the hashtag here is abandon Biden.
Well, in our spotlight, Muslim community leaders from several swing states are gathering on Saturday in Dearborn, Michigan. This is the home to the largest concentration of Arab Americans in the U.S. They are calling out what they say is President Biden's refusal to call for a ceasefire in Gaza, saying the president's stance could affect their support for him in crucial swing states in 2024. Now, the campaign that they're calling Abandon Biden is what they say is a reflection of their outrage over President Biden's handling of the Israel-Hamas war. Public pressure is building for President Biden to call for a ceasefire. I want to bring in our panel here. ABC News Chief White House Correspondent Mary Bruce. ABC News Zorine Shah is with us as well, along with ABC News contributor and former Hillary Clinton 2016 presidential campaign official Amanda Renteria, and ABC News political contributor and former Trump administration official Sarah Isker. Ladies, thank you so much for being with us. Mary, let's start here with you. How concerned is the White House right now with these rumblings from progressive Democrats and this whole abandon Biden movement?
Well, Kira, the president certainly is well aware of all of the pushback and the political pressure that he is receiving, not only from members of his own party, but also, of course, from the Muslim community and from young voters. Look, the president has been walking this really fine line, both on the world stage and domestically, between trying to offer his staunch support, of course, for Israel and their legitimate right to defend themselves, while also trying to constantly urge Israel and really warn Israel to do more to try and limit civilian casualties and to address the growing humanitarian crisis there.
First of all, she's using the words urge and warn. I would say forget about urging them and warning them. You have to demand it. You have to demand that they stop doing it. What's this urge and warn? And I warn you, if you don't stop doing this, then what? The U.S. is going to do what?
The White House has also, though, been quick to point out that the majority of the Democratic Party, much of the country, does support the president's approach to this war, supports his handling of this. That said, every vote counts, especially in critical swing states. We saw that in the last election in 2020. So this president isn't going to take anything for granted. And that is why you are seeing him continue to reach out to Muslim communities. I think to continue to try and be very cautious going forward in how he speaks about this conflict. And of course, continue, most importantly, to urge Israel to take additional steps to try and make sure that their approach is more targeted, more surgical going forward, and to do everything they can to try and protect civilian lives.
You know, Joe Biden, whether he continues to reach out to Arab communities or not, if they see that you're still allowing the killing of their people, your reach out doesn't mean anything. Now, I'm going to connect this to the Black community, too, because remember when we were demanding to defund the police? Remember all this? Remember during the George Floyd protest when we had hundreds and hundreds of people out in the streets all across the country? Actually, that was an international protest as well. Remember all that? Remember the demands that we had? I think one of the biggest demand was to defund the police. People say there were no demands. No, the demand was to defund the police. Not everybody agrees with that, but there was a demand, right? The problem is that we didn't demand do this or we're withholding our vote. Nah, we went out there and voted for Joe Biden, and then he decided to give more money to the police. So it didn't make no sense to me because we got no concessions over fear. Trump bad, so please go do this. And we didn't get anything in return. So now you have the Arab community. They are making demands to Joe Biden to say, you do this or we are withholding our vote.
And in terms of that approach and his rhetoric surrounding this, Doreen, I know you've done extensive reporting on Muslim Americans. What are you seeing, and what do you think the president is he understanding how much support he's losing from this group right now?
not just losing support from a very consequential group of them. I mean, many Muslims I've spoken to, including ones in key swing states, have told me they will not vote for Biden. Look, over the weekend, you just mentioned Muslim leaders from places like Michigan, Georgia, Pennsylvania. They got together to launch that group in Dearborn, Michigan called Abandon Biden. And they're promising two things: that they will not vote for Biden and they will actively campaign against him. Now, they haven't endorsed another candidate, and broadly speaking, they are not friends of Donald Trump, but Michigan itself has over 200,000 Muslim voters. That would have been enough to swing the state last time and the time before. Now, Amar Musa, he is the Biden campaign spokesperson. He has said that Biden knows the importance of earning the trust of every community, as Mary also mentioned, and he continues to work closely and proudly with leaders in the Muslim and Palestinian communities to listen to them, stand up for them, fight back against hate. But Kana, with the exception of very, very few Muslims, broadly speaking, I have not spoken to too many Muslims who feel like Biden is doing enough.
That part right there is very telling. And yes, they are already campaigning against Joe Biden. Now, I couldn't see them supporting RFK Jr. because his position on this issue isn't great either. But I could see some of them either deciding to stay home and not vote at all in 2024, or supporting Cornel West or Jill Stein, who are actually have the best position on this issue in reference to those that are running for president right now. So this is the thing. This may be a time, 2024, where the third party and independent candidates could really disrupt the duopoly. And I think that's going to be a sight to see. We'll have to stick around and see what happens in 2024. But again, the point that I want to make is that here is a community of people that are making demands to the president of the United States, and that they are threatening to withhold their vote. And this is something I think any other group can do, any group, right? And I think we should learn something from this.
Wow. And Amanda, too, as Doreen points out, these votes are extremely consequential here. So if Muslim voters are not going to vote for Biden, where do they go?
Well, that's just the thing, is the options here are not a lot. And in fact, over time, the Democratic Party has worked really hard to build a big tent, be as inclusive as possible, not only to different religions, but also to a younger generation. And right now, that's a difficult balance to have. But the way you do it is you show up. And that's what you're seeing from the Biden administration. They are going to places having difficult conversations in order to bridge a very complicated situation right now. And this is going to take a long time to continue to build that relationship. But there's no doubt right now it's tenuous, but you have to keep showing up and building that connection, because there are no other options for these communities who are looking for something different other than Biden right now.
Notice what she just said there. There are no other options. There are other options, obviously, right? But showing up to those communities, and again, stop showing up only when you want someone to vote for you. That shit drives me crazy, right? It's time for me to, have my reelection. I'm here. You haven't heard from me in years, but I'm back. Just stop doing that. Stop the pandering. But this gentleman here, Hassan Shibli, is a part of the hashtag Abandon Biden campaign. And he's going to tell you why he supports it. So like I said, they have decided to come together and say, no, not this time.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. I'm at the Detroit airport flying back from the Abandon Biden press conference. And yes, alhamdulillah, I'm mobilizing the American Muslim community in key swing states, especially my own, like Florida and others, to send a powerful message that we are abandoning Biden, that we will not vote for him, that we will make sure he's a one-term president because of his enabling of the horrific genocide happening against the Palestinians. Israel has resumed the bombing of Palestinian civilians. Around 10,000 children have been killed every single day. Nearly 200 innocent children killed. A total of about 20,000 civilians killed with American weapons. It's horrific. It's mind-boggling. It's atrocious. And unfortunately, Biden has enabled this. He has blood on his hands. Now, people will say, well, what if someone worse than Biden is elected? Someone worse for America? Someone that perhaps is worse on the Palestine issue? My brothers and sisters, we have to send an important message that Palestine is a red line for the American Muslim community. And we have to send a message that if you enable genocide, the community will abandon you. The community will not vote for you. You will lose office. Only then can we hope that in future elections, it may take 4 years, 8 years, 12 years, 20 years, but at least we will send a message. And so in the future, next time there's a Democrat in office, he will not take our vote for granted. He will recognize that there's a red line, and hopefully we'll do the right thing in that circumstance. Because if we were to vote for Biden after what he's done, it'll just send a message that it's okay. We have to teach the Democrats a lesson.
You heard what he just said? It sends the message that it's okay. We have to teach them a lesson. And I would push this to any other group. If you feel like your needs are not being met by a party that you supported for years, or let's say you're not even a part of the party, but you tend to vote for the person that's running as a Democrat because of policy positions. And if you feel like you've been neglected, if you feel like you haven't been listened to, you're not being heard, but you've still been going out there voting because you were told that they're better than the Republicans. You also know the Republicans aren't going to give you what you want either. What do? You've made the ask. Some of you have been very polite to these politicians. I would say we're beyond the point of being polite now, right? But some of you have been very polite to them, and you're just asking, and you're doing your duty every time as their constituent, going out and voting for them and supporting them as they've asked you to do. But you've received nothing in return. What is your red line? And for him, he told you, red line, Palestinian struggle. He said that is a red line for us. He said those of us that are part of the Muslim community, we got to speak up about that. And we got to hold that line. What is your red line? That's the first question you need to ask yourself. And then, has that red line been crossed? And if it has been crossed, why are you still supporting these people? This guy came back from the conference. They had a abandoned Biden conference in Detroit.
We have to teach all candidates a lesson that this is a red line. And if they want our vote, they can't support genocide. And frankly, that's in line with what the American people want. Over 80% of Democrat voters support a ceasefire, yet only 8% of members of Congress do because they're bought out by AIPAC. 56% of Republican voters support a ceasefire, but no member of Congress who's Republican supports a ceasefire, again, because they're bought out by AIPAC. So my brothers and sisters, I think if Biden wins, it'll be disastrous, but if he loses, they're going to look back and they're going to say, yup, we lost the election when we enabled genocide, and in the future we can't be enabling Israel to commit war crimes using our tax dollars and our weapons. So I'm proud to stand with the abandoned Biden campaign. I urge you all, we have to send a message. Even if the next person is worse, it's okay. That's the only way we can teach a long-term lesson and hopefully shift U.S. foreign policy so it doesn't enable such horrific bloodshed. Assalamu alaikum.
Very well said from that gentleman there. You have to teach the lesson. Now, what was really interesting to me, and I want to bring up this message here as well. Maxwell Frost, he was a Gen Z candidate that ran for office and he won. He actually had in the beginning the correct position on Israel and Gaza. He supported the BDS movement, and then he found out that AIPAC was going to try to put some money up against him. So he abandoned that movement and decided to become like John Fetterman and side with that cause. Now he's actually out here begging people, because see, he knows what's happening, begging people, if you're under 26, if you're 26 and under, Donald Trump, if he becomes president, wants to ensure you that you won't have health care. So you see what they're doing? The Democratic Party now they're pushing out the Gen Z representative here in Congress to fearmonger them and say, guys, I know you don't like Joe Biden, but you got to come out and support him because Donald Trump is going to take away your health care. And you're saying that to some of these people. Some of these people don't even have health care anyway, right? So this is what they're doing. This is how you know they're getting scared.
Of the Republican Party for President of the United States, saying he wants to repeal the Affordable Care Act with absolutely no other plan in mind, which means for all young voters watching right now, if you are 26 and under, Donald Trump, if he becomes president, wants to ensure that you don't have health care. Of the Republican Party for President of the United States saying he wants to repeal the Affordable Care Act with absolutely no other plan in mind, which means for all young voters watching right now, if you are 26 and under, Donald Trump, if he becomes president, wants to ensure that you don't have health care. Of the Republican.
So here comes the fear mongering, right? So if you already don't have health care, does this really make a difference towards you? No, it doesn't. If you are between the ages, he said under 26. So if you're under 26 and you're still on your parents' insurance, does this really make a difference to you? No, probably not. So he's trying to fearmonger people about the healthcare situation, even though Joe Biden never implemented his expansion of the Affordable Care Act that he said that he would. That did not happen. And it's even gotten to the point now where even the State Department, so I don't know if everyone remembers, but Josh Paul actually resigned from the State Department because of this issue. There's so many people that are not with what Joe Biden is doing, not just the Muslim community. Here is Josh with Christine Amanpour, and he's talking about why he left, right? So we're just going to play the first part of this. Even the State Department, listen.
I was struck by what the U.S. Defense Secretary said. I mean, this is a very bold military assessment that this amount of civilian killing is going to lead not only to this tragedy that the world is witnessing, but a strategic, he used the word defeat.
Yes.
And so tell me, how do you assess what he said?
I think he's right. And I think what you see is a tension between those of us who have worked in political and military fields on the ground in the Middle East and in the defense establishment, in the uniformed services, who understand that this is not going to work. This is not going to lead to the result that Israel wants. It is just going to prolong the suffering of both the Israeli and the Palestinian people for another generation, as opposed to, I think, a very political, ideological perspective that is coming from the political level in the US and in Israel and in the UK, that thinks that there is a way to make this work. There is not, and the suffering we are seeing on the ground really reflects that. I can't recall a time in my experience where I've seen such a disconnect between our values and our actions, or between the perspectives of our political leadership and the realities on the ground.
So again, this is Josh Paul. He resigned from the State Department over sending arms to Israel. This guy came from the State Department, one of the biggest propaganda machines in the country. And even he said, this is not going to work. All in all, I think for the first time in my adult life, we have a president whose approval rating, actually, we have a president that has a group of people that actually supported him that are now unwilling to support him over a foreign policy decision. And I think this is the first time I've seen this in my adult life. For the number of people that tell me that Americans don't care about foreign policy, apparently when it's something that hit close to home, Americans do care about it, especially during a time when we have inflation. The minimum wage increase was not passed. We have to think about these things, all these things connected. They're even admitting that here on MSNBC when they talk about the fact that foreign policy decisions may cost Joe Biden the election.
You have a new piece, an op-ed piece in the Los Angeles Times about how the Biden administration's handling of this war, the Israel-Hamas conflict, could actually have a real impact on his re-election bid, which is something we don't often see for foreign policy. But explain to us what you mean.
Sure. Joe Biden, first of all, let me just establish right out of the gate that most Americans don't really think too much about foreign policy at election time. The 2024 campaign might actually give us that rare phenomenon where American voters care deeply about foreign policy. They're seeing these images of Palestinian suffering come in from Gaza as well as the Ukraine war. So we might actually be focused on foreign policy. Given his track record, given his deep experience in foreign policy, Joe Biden should theoretically do really well. But what we're seeing is that because of his administration's handling of the war in Israel, he's losing a lot of progressives when it comes to and imperiling his reelection bid with those progressives, right? 70% of voters under 35 years old do not approve of the way he's handling the war. A minority want him to be as full-throated in the support of Israel as he is. So we're seeing a lot of progressives that, Israel didn't used to be a kind of a controversial issue for Democrats. One pro-Israel lobbyist told me about a decade ago that his job was basically pushing upon an open door. But we're seeing that change. And then also, so he's getting hit from the left on the Israel war. And according to our survey at the Institute for Global Affairs, we're starting to see independents really align with Republicans when it comes to the war in Ukraine. So he's getting hit on the middle as well. Yep. So his policies are putting his reelection bid in jeopardy.
So certainly
So that piece right there is very important, that his foreign policy decisions are actually hurting his chances of reelection. You know, there have been multiple times that we've said that the Democratic Party obviously cannot win without the African-American vote. But I think something that Joe Biden did not take into consideration when it came to the swing states, the Arab population that came out to support him in 2020 was actually really significant. And now, come to find out, he will not win Michigan without their support, which means he cannot win. All I got to say is more power to him. That is the anti-Biden campaign. It is actually happening, folks. Like I said, they actually had a convention in Detroit. They're not playing around. Thank you for the super chat. Colin says, it's great that the Arab community is standing up against Biden in this way. I wish the Black community had the same type of courage. Me too. Same. Terry says, Black people are taking a stand for no tangibles, no votes. Thank you, a kid, for the super chat. Sabby, Muslim community aligning on not voting for Biden. All POC and allies must align on what is required for our votes by any candidate. Hashtag abandon Biden. Robert says state and local independent runs have more of a chance. That is true, Robert. Jody, my red line as a lifelong Democrat voter was Joe Biden on the top of the ticket. I like what you did there, Jody. Thank you for the super chat, DC. My dad can't afford health care working for a hospital. That's another one too. I've had friends that were nurses. I know one in particular. At one point, they were making like $20 an hour, like as an RN. I was kind of surprised by that. But they couldn't afford the health insurance. Thank you for the super chat, Rodrigo. Sabs, you should have on Whitney Webb. Great reporter. If you know how to reach Whitney Webb, let me know. I would love to interview her, but I can't find contact information for her. I went to the Unlimited Hangout on that website to find it, but there's no way to contact her, it seems like. So if you know how to reach her, let me know, Joe.